Welcome back to another update from Harvesting the Sun. Sorry I've been gone for a while. I've been busy with plenty of other projects. So first of all, the disclaimer, I'm not an expert. There might be some mistakes in what I am going to show you. So today's update is going to be a little bit different for a couple of reasons. One is all those nice graphs and things I brought you. Google has updated their security and prevented me from connecting to the Google spreadsheet where I collect all the data. So I can't connect it to the charting software. So I'm going to be showing you my end-phase reports live, and I'm going to take you to the spreadsheet where I keep all of the information, and I'll walk you through some of it live. So first of all, let's start with end phase. So when I log into my portal, this is kind of the screen that I'm presented with, and you're probably used to seeing screenshots of this in the slides I normally present. So I'm going to go a bit fast because I'm going to cycle through 6 months worth of information in this one episode. So for the month of January, we produced 201 kilowatt hours. We exported 13, we imported 573, giving us a net import of 560 and a total consumption of 762. So as you would expect from January, we don't have too much sunshine. So when you look at these, when you look at the graph, the blue segments on the bar here represent the production, and so it's relatively low. It looks like we get kind of 10 or 15 at most on some of the best days here in January. The grey portion here above the bar is energy that we are importing from the grid, and the orange below the bar is what we are consuming in total in the house. And if you see any grey slivers here at the bottom of the bar, that means we are exporting energy back to the grid. Okay, so this is what January looks like. 75% of all of our energy, electrical energy, came from the grid. Fast forwarding to February then, so reading out the same numbers again, we imported 589 kilowatt hours, we produced 236, we exported 19.5, making a net import of 570 and a total consumption of 806. So again, you can see that the generation on the average day is around 10 to 15 kilowatts again. On the worser days, we seem to have about 5 or 6. You can see days like this where we seem to have a lot of import from the grid. So this is when we are charging the car. So we've probably done some long runs, and then we're plugging in every day or every other day to charge it up overnight. Days like this where you don't see such huge spikes, this is just kind of normal usage from the house without the car in the equation. Okay, fast forwarding to March. So this is where we did something different. So first of all, let me run you through the numbers. We imported 855 kilowatt hours. We produced 472. We exported 204. We net imported 651. And in total, our house consumed 1.1 megawatt hours. Now, you might immediately notice this is different from the prior couple of months, and there is a reason for that. In the month of March, I switched some settings around so that we export surplus energy back to the grid. But the difference is I set the Give Energy battery to charge to 100% every night regardless. Prior to that, I wasn't charging to 100%. I was letting the battery deplete, and then I was letting the solar surplus during the day recharge the battery. Now what I've done is configure the battery to charge overnight on the cheap rate to 100%. So by 5:30 in the morning, the battery's at 100% and it starts to discharge. When the solar production starts, it recharges the battery, which means the battery's back to 100% by 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. And then for the rest of the day, we are exporting any surplus energy. Now, the reason I changed it all around is because we can buy electricity overnight at 7.5p, as it was in March, and Octopus have allowed customers to be on a smart import and export tariff at the same time. They changed their rules towards the back end of last year. So now I can export surplus energy and earn 15p. So I'm buying it at 7.5 and I'm selling it back to Octopus at 15p. So I'm making a profit of 7.5 pence per kilowatt hour that I send back to them. So it is in my interest to consume as much electricity as I can in the overnight hours, and then where I have a surplus, send it back to them during the day. So that is what's going on. Now you start to see that for all the coming months, you will see that there's more grey segments above the line because we're charging the battery overnight, but you're also going to start to see more grey segments below the line because we're sending surplus back. Now, if you've watched my entire series up until now, I've been telling you the aim of the game is to consume as much electricity as possible and minimize what you send back to the grid. And that was based on previous prices being 7.5p being the cheapest import rate overnight, but export Octopus was only giving 4.1 pence. So exporting is the last resort because everything else is costing me more. Now that Octopus are giving me 15p for every unit I export, the whole strategy has changed. I want to export as much as possible to them, and then I want to buy as much as possible overnight. And during the daytime hours when I'm not exporting, I want my battery to have charged up overnight, and I want to be using that to keep me going during the daytime hours. So this way, my effective buying rate is only 7.5p an hour, but I'm selling energy back at 15. So that's what you're going to notice is different, and that is why you suddenly see a massive jump in our export rate to 204 kilowatts for the month of March. But you also see a jump in our import rates up to 855, whereas the previous 2 months were 550-ish. And this is the reason. We're importing a lot more overnight, but then we're also exporting a lot more during the day. So you need to kind of consider the net import numbers to kind of balance this out in terms of our household consumption. And that means that this circle in the middle is now going to have some odd numbers in it. It's also jumped up to say we consumed 1.1 megawatt hours for the month of March. Okay, it also means our grid dependence number is messed up because of this strategy. It's kind of saying that we use the grid more, which is true, but we're not kind of trying to go off the grid because in the UK that's never really going to be possible. But what we are trying to do here is reduce our bills and our costs with all of this technology. Okay, moving forward to April then. So in the month of April, we imported 804 kilowatt hours. We produced a whopping 758. We exported 324. So our net import was just 480 kilowatts. And as a household, we consumed 1.2. The reason this is higher but these are lower is because, of course, we have produced about 300 kilowatt hours more compared to the prior month. You can see now that we're averaging at least 20 kilowatts every day in terms of production. Some days we've got up to 39 or something. I think I just saw flash up here, 36. So April in England is normally rainy, so this was a particularly sunny April that we've had this year. Moving forward to May then, so we imported 680, we produced 864, we exported a whopping 453, so our net import was just 226, but overall as a house we consumed 1.1 megawatt hours. So our consumption is staying roughly consistent, but you can see where the energy is coming from is changing here. Okay, so now if you look across the all of the bars here, the amount of energy generation has increased, so we are pushing quite a few days over here reaching 40 kilowatt hours, but we're probably averaging about 30 for the month of May. So that's pretty good. It's not the best. I think the first May that we had solar power in 2022 was the best one, but this is not far off. And again, you can see that below the line the segments of grey are starting to get bigger and bigger, which represents our export back to the grid. Moving forward to June then, so again here you can see our production is between 20 and 30 kilowatt hours per day. The production seems to be pretty consistent, so I think we've had consistent weather through the month of June. If I remember correctly, it was quite sunny for the first couple of weeks. You can see days with big import numbers, so these are the days where we're charging the car. Okay, so not so many big journeys in the month of June. But the import was 652 from the grid. We had 1.1 megawatt hours of solar production, so that's whopping. We exported roughly half of this, 577, back to the grid. So our net import was just 75 kilowatt hours. 75 kilowatt hours in the month, but we consumed a whopping 1.1. So that kind of shows you, if your intention is to kind of go green, get off the grid, we are pretty close here. And we use a lot of energy in our house, and with an electric car, we're never going to be off the grid, because the electric car just sucks up so much electricity. Without the electric car, it's definitely possible to be completely off the grid for the summer months in the year. And finally, looking across to July then, so we imported 675, we produced 931, we exported 436, and we had a net import of 238. And overall our house consumed 1.2 megawatt hours. So we've consumed a tiny bit more. We have not produced as much, so July wasn't that sunny as we expected. We've had a couple of days which aren't that good. You can see from the profile here that there's 2 or 3 days where we're charging the car and sucking down a load of power, but otherwise our consumption is reasonably consistent. Okay, and we've managed to reduce our dependence on the grid ever so slightly. So those are the monthly updates for the first 7 months of this year. If I kind of show you the same information instead of by day but by month, this is what the curve looks like. So year to date we've produced 4.6 megawatt hours, we've imported 4.9, we've exported 2.1, so our net import is 2.9 megawatt hours. But overall as a house we've consumed 7.5. The amount of driving that we're doing this year is less compared to last year, so the numbers are probably a little bit more favourable. I want to show you this as a heat map. So in the last update I showed you the heat map, but this is a good way of seeing how our production is comparing year on year. So you can see, for example, June 2023 is the lightest shade of blue here, which means that was the sunniest month we've had in total. May 23 was particularly sunny. You can see that's a lighter shade compared to May 24 or May 22. And 23 we had a bit more sunshine in September, so we managed to stretch out the summer a bit deeper into the year, but it started a month late, if you can kind of look at this shade of blue compared to the previous two. The amount of production in July seems consistent with previous years, so we'll have to see how this month pans out and the remainder of the year. But so far we are not producing as much electricity as we did in the year of 23, because June was a much better month last year. Okay, so that is everything to show you here from the Enphase data. So now what I would like to do is talk about the spreadsheet. So here's a spreadsheet you're used to seeing. I'm going to be doing it live this time. For those of you who've been watching, you can see all the previous data is over here in the background. Now I'm not going to read out all of this because it takes quite a long time. You're welcome to pause the video and kind of study these numbers in greater detail if you want, but I am going to go through these columns pretty fast. Okay, so the solar production numbers over here that you see in the first row should match up roughly with what I just went through with Enphase, because that's where I get the numbers from. Likewise with the export numbers, same with the household consumption, but breaking down the household consumption, you can see how much we are consuming in the house from solar, how much we're pumping into the eddy to heat our hot water, and then how much we're putting in the car, which is on zero because we charge the car overnight on the cheap rate and we export during the day at the more expensive rate. It's more cost effective that way. You can see our electricity import from the grid, so the numbers are higher compared to last year, for example, because of this export strategy that we're testing out. and it seems to be working, because when I show you the numbers you'll see what I mean. Gas import from the grid. So I haven't done the comparison yet, but 22 versus 23, in 2023 we used about 10% less gas. So we had tinkered with the system, we'd put on Tado thermostats, so on and so on. So we'll see what happens. I can tell you that July 24 we had our annual service done on the boiler, and despite paying a company to service the boiler for every year for many years, we changed the provider that we use, and this person, in my opinion, is the first person to actually service the boiler. So most of the folks come along, they look at it and go, well, I'm not touching it because it's not broken, and they give you the certificate and whatever you need, sign your logbooks. This chap this year has kind of opened it up and he's gone, look, this is full of soot and this is dirty, and this spark plug is kind of got some, I don't know what the right word is, corrosion or something on it. So he kind of gets a file out and brushes it clean, and he replaces some other part. It's a bit like getting your car serviced when you go to a mechanic, right? The minor service basically doesn't do anything. The major service really does something, and they check everything. So I'm interested to see how the second half of this year pans out, because with the things that he's done, he cleared out a lot of kind of soot and not soot, but like iron build-up in the system for one of the boilers, because we do not have a magnetic filter on it. So when he opened up some stuff, he found loads of gunk clogging it up, which he's cleared out. But he's recommending that both of our systems needs a power flush. Not yet, but we're borderline. He did some water tests. So that might be something that we have to plan for next year, and we can observe what kind of efficiency it might accomplish. But having seen this new plumber and gas engineer work compared to the previous one, I can see that he does power flushes way more thoroughly, using a much more industrial strength machine, and he doesn't stop until the water running through the system is actually clear, whereas the previous person just wanted to let it run for an hour and a half and then call it done. So all round, I think the new engineer is doing a better job, so I'm interested to see what kind of efficiencies we accomplish out of that. Okay, capital investment, we haven't made any more improvements to our system, so that stays exactly the same. Unit prices for gas and electricity, the price has come down in April. For gas, you can see that is roughly 20% or something like that, and then it's come down a little bit more again from the month of July. Electricity has dropped from 31 pence to 27 pence, and now we're on 24 pence. Off-peak electricity has been consistent on 7.5p, but it's dropped to 7p now, so that's a bit cheaper. In export, you can see that when I switch back to Octopus export tariff, we're on 15p for every unit we send back to them. Just as a comparison for you, if I go back to the beginning of this spreadsheet, you can see the kind of unit prices we were paying there. So gas was cheaper, and we still haven't got back to this kind of price for March 2022, where gas was 4p. Electricity at the time was 21 or 22p, and we still haven't got back to that kind of price. But we are pretty close now. Okay, so moving on then to talk about these same numbers in monetary figures. So all that solar production has saved us these figures here in pounds: 49, 57, 68, 135, 152, 196, 177 pounds. Being on Octopus Go, or the Octopus Smart Import Tariff, we have managed to save this amount every month by charging our batteries and basically buying electricity at 7.5p versus the peak time rate of about 30p. Using the eddy has saved us this much, so if you're wondering why it's not more, it's because the saving from the eddy is calculated based on the difference between the off-peak electricity price and the gas price. And as you can see from these numbers, they are reasonably close, and so the amount of saving calculated here is not much. But we had a comment from somebody some time ago, and I kind of agreed with it, but I didn't do anything about it. The immersion heater is inside the water tank, so the electricity and energy transfer is a lot more efficient than burning the gas boiler, because you lose a bit in noise and a bit of the heat energy is lost in the pipes travelling from the boiler all the way to the tank. And for one of the boilers, we're travelling one floor. There's probably close to 10 meters of pipe running before you get from the boiler to the tank. And the second boiler, we're running 2 stories, and I don't really know how the pipes run, but we're talking at least 15 meters, maybe 20 meters between the two. And plus that second boiler is 20 years old now and it's still hanging on there. So it's probably not the 98 or 97% efficient that it once was when it was brand new. We're probably losing a lot there, particularly as it turns out that I've never seen any of the previous engineers do the kind of service that the chap did this year. So we're testing out just using the immersion heater more and heating the water directly. So what happens at the moment is we heat both tanks of hot water overnight during the 6 hours of cheap electricity, and then we also heat both with surplus energy throughout the day. And then after that, if we have surplus, it goes back to the grid. All right, so we no longer charge our car from solar surplus because we'd rather earn money back from the grid. We have not really been doing that many long runs and had a need to charge the car from the grid, so we're not paying for any peak time charging there. We're not paying for any peak time electricity because we're not desperate. We're doing most of our charging overnight on the cheap rate, and then we're not charging from the public network because we're not doing so many long runs at the moment. In terms of money saved by not buying diesel instead, you can see that it fluctuates a lot, but we're going from £100 to £300 to £250-ish a month. It really depends on the number of miles that we're driving, and there's no consistency there. So overall, this is how much having an electric car has saved us net when you consider the savings and the diesel prices, right? Each month we are saving, let's just call that an average of £200 a month by having an electric car. So grand total, all of our OPEX savings, earlier in the year we were getting about $250 each month, and as we got to the summer months it's gone up to $450, $500-ish kind of pounds saved per month relative to what we were paying before we got all of this equipment. So in terms of our cumulative savings, we have now saved £11,568, versus if I didn't have any of this stuff and I was paying for electricity and gas from the grid at the normal prices with all of these spikes, I would have had to spend £11,568 more than I currently have. So when I calculate the balance, we have £11,922 to go to break even, which means we have paid off 49.2% of our system. And today being the 4th of August when I record this, we've probably hit 50% paid off. So we've had the system for 2 years and 8 months, and we've paid off half of it already. And our forecast here is to break even at 5 years and 6 months. Now, remember, our forecast is linear, so it doesn't take seasonality into account. And for the first year, we only had one battery. We have only recently been able to export our peak rate, export our electricity for 15p. So we're now earning more, and we've got the hang of the system. We've fine-tuned it. We've understood it. So we're managing to kind of adapt our style to eke out more savings. So I'm still surprised. I thought we would kind of average about 6 years, but we seem to be still coming down slightly on this. So it looks, my guess is that it's going to settle at break even at 5 to 5.5 years, something like that. So that's a big deal. If you remember when I had the slides, I always focus on the installer estimate slide, because my installer thought break even is going to be at 18 years. What I'm proving to you with all of these numbers is that break even is going to be somewhere around 5.5 years. So that is a complete game changer when you're considering a return on your investment here. And if you're planning, if you're calculating this investment going, well, I'm not going to invest in solar panels or a battery because I'm not sure if I'm going to stay in my house for 18 years or more in order to, receive the benefit. Well, what I'm telling you is if I break even at 5.5 years, that might change your whole calculation, because you may say that, well, I know I'm going to be in my house for at least 5.5 years, maybe 10 years, and that way you get 4 years worth of savings out of all of this versus all the folks who haven't got this or are unable to get this and having to pay the extortionate prices for energy that we have at the moment. So on that, let me come to my Octopus Bills. So what I've done is I've taken the 7 months that we've got them for, and I just pasted a screenshot here on the slide for each month so you can see what's going on. The point is, you can see in the winter months we're paying whatever amount we're paying for all of our energy, but it's still substantially less because we have all of this free solar power. You can see how much we're earning back from Octopus by exporting energy, and you can see in the month of March that we've gone from £2 or £3 a month, and we've jumped straight to £30 because we started exporting a lot more. So we've got £30 coming to us there. In April we got £49, and in May they kind of realised that they had made a mistake and made some sort of correction here. But I think this is what we got for our export. I think they've taken all of this out for the prior months, then they've credited us this number back for them, and then we have got the month of April going on here. And then for May we've made £68 back, June we've made £85 back, and July we've made £67 back. So if you see for June, the gas cost us £40 and £20, and the electricity cost us £67, but we made £85 back. So our net bill was £20 or something in total, including the service charge for the month of June. July's not so hot, but you can see here, quick and dirty maths, we have earned more money by sending electricity to the grid than we paid the grid to buy all of the electricity that we did from them in the month of July. So that cancels itself out roughly, and that means all we've done is paid for a bit of gas in that month. Say 34 and 17, so I make that around £51, £52 is our entire energy bill for the month of July. Okay, so that's kind of the major update. Sorry I've been gone for so long, but this is it. I've caught you up on 6 months. You're welcome to pause the video at any point if you want to study these numbers more carefully. But my message, as always, stays the same. In my opinion, if you're able to get the equipment, it's worth it. I know I've invested a lot of money, and you might not have this much available. I've certainly got this stuff cheaper before it all went through the roof. My recommendation is, if you can't afford to get everything, begin with getting a battery. That will immediately take you from paying the 28-30p for peak time electricity down to 7.5p or 7p now for off-peak electricity. And as long as you get a battery which can accommodate 20 hours of the 24 hours in a day of your consumption, then you will effectively be able to run your entire 24 hours on the cheap rate electricity. Okay, so that's number one. Then number two, of course, consider solar panels if you can afford it. Now there's a few different systems. If you get the string inverter system, then it's cheaper, but you need to make sure you're not affected by shading, because string inverters are configured to the weakest link, and those systems are not so easy to expand afterwards, because your inverter's capability tends to be sized for the number of panels you ask for, and they don't oversize it in case you want to add some more on afterwards. If you go the other extreme like we did and get microinverters, these are designed where some of your panels are affected by shading, or if you've done what we've done is have a east-west array, so really only half of my panels are ever working in a day. If I had it on a string system, all the panels would be configured to the weakest link the entire day. Whereas the way we've done it this way, each panel is individual. So if one of them has a shadow on it, the rest of them can still work at full power if they have enough sunshine. So overall, it means our production figures are higher. And also, if you can't afford to kind of put as many panels on as you want in one hit, then microinverter systems are much more expandable, and you can add to the array at a later stage relatively easy. And if you remember back to one of my videos a year and a half ago, I added 4 additional panels onto this summer house which face south, and I was able to do that all by retrofitting. I did it by myself because I'm comfortable climbing on 1 story's worth of roof, and the microinverter system is such that it was easy just to add them all on, and they communicate back to the hub via powerline communication, so I didn't have to worry about how I'm going to get the information about production from the panel back to the hub, which is in our loft. So a couple of details to consider there, right? If you've got the money to get it all in one hit, or if you want to stagger it, then you can do that, and it will be beneficial to you, even if you have a smaller system or part of the system. And then, of course, if you get an electric car, this is a game changer for 2 reasons. One is you can charge your car on the cheap rate overnight, or 2, you can charge your car from the free solar power that's generated during the day. And as long as you're charging at home on these cheaper rates and not using the public charging points, you will save a considerable amount of money versus paying for petrol or diesel. Okay, I know for some of you it's not possible. If you use a public charging point to charge your car most of the time, then it is either the same price or it's more expensive than petrol or diesel. Electric cars are more cost effective when you can charge at home, and even more so if you can charge at home on the cheap rate, or if you have solar panels you can charge at home for free. Okay. Right, so that's my update. Please like, subscribe, comment. If you are considering switching to Octopus, the referral link is in the description for the video. Until the next time, over and out.